Hello, you are listening and You're watching Where My Pros At here on twitch.tv/ Where My Pros At. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Hello, welcome back, guys.
So we're trying out a new setup today. Do give us any feedback. We're thinking of not doing this next week. Now that we've actually tried it out, we think it looks a little unnatural.
Yeah.
I think it has some benefits, but it has some downsides. Let us know your feedback, what you think. We have a second webcam available, so we're thinking we first thought we would try this, but next week we might try having a Doge cam instead, which might
Puppy
be
cam.
a puppy cam, which might be preferable. So let us know your opinions, and we'd love to hear them. Today, what we're doing today?
We are talking about The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Now, I have to say that I did not finish this book. It was my choice, and I was really excited about it. Like I was saying before, I just watched the BBC take on The Three Musketeers, and I really, really loved that. It was full of action and romance and really just good messages and good themes. I tapped out after I'm just going to come out and say it. I tapped out after the rape scene. D'Artagnan fools a woman into sleeping with him by pretending to be someone else. And I think it was Milady, the femme fatale, that he does this to. And I don't know.
Yeah, that sure would leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth reading that. I also didn't finish this book, and you got a lot further than I did. I actually read the first 15%, 10% of the book twice because I wasn't absorbing it. I just realized that I had no idea what was going on in the book. I actually looked up those high school notes websites
Spark Notes.
Yeah, Spark Notes to tell you a synopsis. I did that, and I read through the chapters that I'd read. And I was like, I didn't know this stuff happened. I just didn't absorb that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was so lost in the overly polite, chivalrous nature of their discussions, and it just dragged on to the point that it's like when you read text and you're not actually absorbing anything. You read the words, but you have no idea what you just read. You couldn't repeat it back. That's what I did with this book twice, and I was like, I just can't do it. So I tapped out before you did. I didn't know you tapped out until today, actually.
Oh,
you told me about the rape scene, but I didn't realize you stopped.
I told you I tapped out after that.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you actually stopped. Okay.
I said I had. I mean, there were parts of this book I have to say that as a literature nerd, I quite enjoyed. There was parts that were really quite witty. I actually laughed out loud at a few parts, but I can understand how some people read this and are just like, I don't know what's going on, because it is written in kind of an archaic, more olden version of the English language. Well, it was written in French and it was translated into English. So I understand how you're feeling that way. I understand how you're feeling kind of like, I don't know what's going on. You have to go and read the Spark Notes just to understand what's going on. And I mean, I do that with Shakespeare and stuff like that. I love Shakespeare. His stuff, some of his stuff is really kind of hard to read, but once you get the hang of it, kind of like with Clockwork Orange, it has this kind of separate language. Once you get the hang of it, you start to understand it. Here, it was just kind of dull. I struggled to get from one scene to the next, even though there were a lot of witty parts that I really enjoyed. But I can understand how you felt like that, how you felt like, you couldn't quite understand what was going on and had to look it up and stuff. But
so you said you were enjoying it at the start. I remember you said that you thought it was very witty and such.
Yeah.
So what happened with the decline? Did it?
I think for me, it just kind of I was listening to the audiobook first and foremost, because it was the only version I could get from my library. So I got the audiobook and I was kind of doing other things, and I realized that I just was not paying attention to the story. And then there were little things along the way that I was like, okay, because you go in with this idea that the four musketeers, because there's four of them, are these bastions of chivalry and heroic ability and heroicness, and the kind of arseholes, to be completely honest with you. I think our Aramis is kind of the only one I kind of enjoyed, but he would be absolutely no fun to hang out with because he'd be constantly talking about going and being a monk and taking his orders, and he's constantly debating theology, and he's a bit of a womanizer as well. Porthos, he could be quite fun as well, but he also, again, there was just a lot of like issues with like the text, and I don't know. I'm just disappointed, I think, more than anything.
Indeed. Speaking of being disappointed, our second webcam seems to have died. So looks like you're the main attraction today,
Okay.
and also the only attraction. I'll continue trying to fix it here. Yeah, I didn't really care for any of the characters going in because they all seemed, every single one of them were so ready to leap to combat to solve any slight injustice.
Yeah.
You slightly offended me by saying I dropped a napkin when in fact it was not me, even though it really was me, and so we will now go to combat.
But that was kind of a witty part. I know exactly what you're talking about when D'Artagnan runs into Aramis and he drops the handkerchief. It's because the handkerchief has the crest of one of his friends who, if like this handkerchief really did fall from Aramis, it would mean that he was boinking his friend's wife. So that, you can see where there would be a duel fought over that.
So he was boinking his friend's wife?
Yeah, he absolutely was. Are you kidding? It's Aramis.
They're willing to drop to deathly combat over the most minor thing, but then they also go out and screw each other's wives?
Yeah.
So what's the message here? That these are a bunch of
toxic
a-holes?
masculinity. I don't know. That masculinity has really changed a lot over the centuries, and this was actually based on a true story. D'Artagnan was a real Garden Cavaliers. It's such a cultural touchstone, the Three Musketeers, and I think that because of the adaptations that it kind of inspired later on. Like, we all know about the Three Musketeers, but I don't know hardly anyone who's actually read the book to completion. Because it is one of those things that it's just like, you love the films, or you love when Donald Duck did the version of Three Musketeers.
I don't remember that.
with his nephews.
Oh, I do remember
Or
that.
Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah.
It's one of those stories that the characters are bigger than the story, I think. And I think for that alone, it has a lot of cultural merit. But I don't know, I was just bored. I was bored, and I love like archaic English literature, trite. So this was right up my alley, and obviously this is my choice, but between the sexism and the problematic kind of like instances, and the poor horse, D'Artagnan, his father gave him 2 rules. He was like, don't sell the horse, and go make your fortune. You have to go see Treville and, he was a friend of mine, go make your fortune. He sells the bloody horse. It's the first thing he does. The very first thing he does. D'Artagnan, is kind of like played off in a lot of the adaptations as this kind of like hot-headed, young, Gaston, what was it, Gaston? Gascon. He's Gascon, yeah. No, but like in the adaptations of the book, he's kind of played off, as this kind of like young novice who has yet a lot to learn, but he shows promise. But in the book, he's just an arsehole. In my complete and utter, like, honest opinion.
They all are assholes. I mean, they're all just... Well, I said that at the very start when I was like 10 pages in, and I came through and I said a quote to you. I can't recall which quote it was.
Yeah, it was about hitting your valet as hard as you hit your
wife.
Yeah,
and I was like, this just shows how horrible this is. And admittedly, like we said last week, this book was written in 1844, so it does need to be looked at with the context of the time. But that immediately put such a bad taste in my mouth. I was happy to continue, but I've had a hard time just accepting that as, oh, boys will be boys, I guess. I mean, it's okay, and it's okay to beat your wife as hard as possible in those times.
I mean, we did have a little bit of argument over this, and I don't excuse it. It's not okay, obviously, but you have to kind of read it with like the time period that it was written in. And I remember we had this discussion as well when I watched the movie Jezebel, which I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's really good, way better than Gone with the Wind. It's a bit grittier than Gone with the Wind, if such a thing. It's less kind of was romanticized in the South. Anyway, there's a scene where I was telling you about where it's played off as kind of cutesy that her fiance is got a cane and he's going to go upstairs and whip her because she's sassy. And one of his colleagues is, what did he say? He said you beat your wife and then send her a diamond necklace. And this is played off as kind of like a cutesy, like, that's just, cutesy advice that you're given. So even as early as as late as the 1950s is it's still kind of played off as kind of acceptable and kind of funny. It's
Well, even recently, the famous Scottish actor who passed away last year, Sean Connery.
yeah.
He in an early 2000s, late 2000s interview,
Diane Sawyer, yeah.
he said that he repeatedly did the same thing, and he thinks it's completely acceptable to beat your wife if she steps out of line, because who else is going to teach her a lesson? I mean, it's still prevalent today, and obviously not as prevalent as it was back then, to the point where. But what was surprising is just how I haven't heard about this. When you talk about Three Musketeers and you see the popular adaptations, they tend to keep what we like in the modern eye from it and remove all the other stuff, which is surprising because.
That's good though, because I kind of like I like that. I like being able to take something that was written in a time period where this kind of stuff was acceptable and make it more palatable for a modern audience. I think that that's an important thing. It doesn't mean that the story itself isn't worthwhile. It means that the story could be improved. That's a good thing.
I mean, I partially agree. I think so long as the original adaptation still exists and can still be viewed, and you can still understand it in that time period, because otherwise it does wash over realities of that time period, and that's sad because those women need to be remembered, right? And the women who went through that need to be remembered.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What women need to be remembered?
The women who got beat by their men repeatedly through history.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Sure. I mean, like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's a point, but I don't know. Like, if we could pull it back to Three Musketeers, this is a great segue actually to how the story was surprising, because the adaptation that I recently saw was so good, and it actually featured a child-free heroine. There was the women were seen as equal to the men in kind of their wits and their abilities to be heroic. There was actors who were of different descents, and it was touched upon. It wasn't the kind of thing where everyone gets along and it's fine, but these things were addressed, but they weren't made a big issue of. And I think that the story, I was expecting the story to be a bit more like that, and I was shocked that it wasn't, but I'm still happy that the story happened so that adaptations like that could take this kernel of a good story and make it into something that is even better, something that it was kind of meant to be, in my humble opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with having adaptations like that. Like I said, just as long as the source material still exists and can be read in its original form. I think if you took the source material and just removed the bad bits, that would be bad for society.
I agree.
So we're not. This is going to be probably a short show today, folks, because we don't have much to say about this book since we didn't really read it, because neither of us managed to get through it for various reasons.
I mean, I got through quite a fair bit, but I still don't have that much to say about it. Like, the whole like sexism, blah 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 aside, it's kind of a boring story. I think the only storyline that I found was interesting in any kind of regard was the chasing after the Queen's diamond earrings, and D'Artagnan has to go all the way to England to get these diamond earrings, and he has to get back before this ball to make sure that she can wear them for her husband. It's kind of like a little intrigue, but aside from that, I have to say I was bored, and I'm so sorry that I chose this book. I'm sorry. I will choose a better one next time.
Very guilty of choosing things that I thought would be interesting or whatever, and end up being something that are unreadable.
Yeah.
So it's okay. And I think it is okay, folks, to not read a book all the way through. I think I think you're still able to give a review to a book as well, even if you haven't read the whole thing, because if it's bad enough that you put it down, you have something to say about that, right?
I agree.
But admittedly, for my part, I can't describe the last 75% of the books, 80% of the book really, because I haven't read it. So I'm only really talking about the first few chapters and my experiences with that. But you managed to hold down on the bitter taste that I had at the start, and you managed to keep going through. So kudos to you for getting as far as you did.
I really wanted to like this book. I really wanted to get through it and like it. And, you know, I all I can say is I'm really thankful that it has became what it has in our society and this cultural touchstone that it has become, because the story is not not a cultural touchstone for me or something that's significant in any way. I can understand how it was groundbreaking for the time, and I really appreciate that it was written by a man of color during the 1800s. I think that's amazing. Aside from that, though, I found it very boring, stodgy, and, you know, kind of like up itself a wee bit, to be completely honest, which is in keeping with the kind of the Cavaliers I get from my impression of the French Cavaliers. So.
Yeah. It's also just how incredibly hypocritical the Musketeers are.
Yeah.
That was just...
Yeah, these are supposed to be our heroes, and yet they're saying one thing and doing another, and, you know, beating people and killing people with impunity, and just stealing things and being horrible to women. And I just, you know, like, D'Artagnan is a stalker. I'm sorry, Mrs. Bonacieux, like, she needs to run. She needs to run because he is crazy. Like, she needs to file a restraining order or something. There was something not going right in his head. But anyway, I digress. Do we know what we are reading for next week?
I don't think we do, actually. I don't think we have a choice for next week.
I know that there was some talk about Grady Hendrix, my best friend's exorcism, which I'm quite excited about. That was a couple weeks ago. I think that was Aaron's suggestion.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, we could maybe do a community one next. I think that's community one next. So yeah. Sure. So what was it again?
Grady Hendrix, my best friend's exorcism. It is a 1980s kind of one of those pulpy kind of fiction novels that has a huge cult following online. I've actually sent a copy of it to my sister Sky in France, my teenage sister, because I think it would be something that she'd really enjoy as well. And from what I've read about the reviews and the kind of synopsis of it is that it is going to be mental but really fun to read. So we really need something fun to read. I'm ready for it. I think this is going to be a good choice for us.
I don't know about you and your personal reading aside from the show, but I know I've been moving away from stuff that I feel like I have to read recently and more towards enjoyable things, because in the past 5-6 months I've read so many things that I feel like I should read and not things that I enjoy. So I think you need to do both, right?
I've been reading Fairy Tales of the Disillusioned, which is a really interesting anthology of fairy tales that were written during the kind of Art Nouveau period, Bohemian period of French history. And they're really kind of like a mirror to how French people were feeling about industrialization and, you know, this kind of like incoming of machines and things like that. And so I know that sounds like a stodgy thing to read, but I'm really enjoying it. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I was also trying to read The Wife Upstairs, which is like a modern take on Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm finding that difficult. It's you know when a book thinks it's too clever, when it tries to be more clever than it is. I feel like we're kind of in that territory. I keep falling asleep trying to read it. But so what are you reading right now? What are you reading for fun?
I'm actually reading a book called The Passage by Justin McCrone, I think his name is.
Oh, is that the zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, it's kind of zombie. It's but the zombies are like immortal, and the book, the first like third of the book is all about the fall of humanity. Then suddenly, pretty much everybody in the entire book is dead, and it moves on to like maybe a generation and a half later, where most people have forgotten the real world and they're trying to just survive, and there's one city left. And it's not even really a city; it's like an encampment. It's like a Boy Scouts camp or something that was renovated into a. And I'm really shocked that the author could write a book that's so enjoyable, where almost all of the characters die, and you move on to an entire new cast a third of the way through.
That's impressive.
It's also a very long book. It's about 32 hours audiobook. I think it's like 900 pages or something like that.
Wow.
Thoroughly enjoying
I've
it.
noticed that you've been, every time I go in to check in on them, because we're that married couple that we can't pass by each other's door without going, hey, what are you doing? I know we like each other.
It's weird.
It's weird. But I can't do zombie apocalypse stuff. So kudos to you. And 900 pages, dear. That's pretty impressive.
I think it's less about the zombie stuff and more about the survival of humanity, and that's what I enjoy. And I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I don't know why. I just find it fascinating.
It depresses me.
It's the endurance of humanity's spirit and what we think is important to preserve. I think that's so fascinating.
I love that. That's a lovely way to take that on. But the last post-apocalyptic I ever read was Stephen King's The Stand, which is something. Absolutely. I don't know if you've read it. Have you read it yet? So I don't know whether to look at the camera, to look at you.
When you're talking, I look at you.
Okay. I just been looking at the camera. Have you read The Stand?
No, it's on my to read list, but I haven't yet read it.
I think you'd really enjoy it. Just for what you just said about humans. Da 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 da.
I do enjoy King's books,
but it's one of his good ones. It's not one of his poop ones, like The Cell, or some of his
Thinner.
other ones where
Thinner's so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm getting thinner. I feel like that was like every seventh line of conversation. Oh no, I'm getting thinner.
We should watch the movie.
It's so bad.
It's amazing.
It is the worst. And Stephen King loves the movie. He thinks it's such a good adaptation.
He is so bad with movies. He thought Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was shit, and I do not. The amount of cocaine that he was on to think that Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was shit.
Well,
and then he made his own, and it was horrible.
I didn't even know he made his own, did he?
Yes, he made his own. He made his
God.
own The Shining. It's not good.
So I have to say that having read the book last year, actually, and
The Shining.
Yeah. And having seen the book, having seen the film. Go lie down, buddy. Go lie down. Go lie down. Bedtime. Having seen the film now and also read the book last year, I thoroughly enjoyed both. I love the film and I really enjoyed the book. But they are entirely different. I mean, the book is all about mystical forces and magic, and it's really about the magic of the boy and The Shining. That's why it's named after. It's the spark that he has within him.
And The Shining's about how Stanley Kubrick helped film the moon landing, fake the moon landing. Some people, have you not heard of this?
Is this a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, have you not heard of this conspiracy theory? It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. I would suggest any of our listeners there's a documentary, oh god, what is it? It's like Room something. It was the room in the Shining hotel that, everything happens in. Watch it. It's crazy. I am kind of a conspiracy. No, I'm not a conspiracy theory person. I'm not like 5G QAnon or whatever. But
fascinated by them.
I'm fascinated by this, and this one is fascinating. And you will start to, if you've watched the film more than once, you will start to be like, oh my god, what is going on? There's stuff that makes sense, and like the little boy's sweatshirt just watch it, okay? Because I am not explaining it properly. Anyway, but I wanted to say about The Stand, just one more point. Great time to read The Stand because it's about a contagious disease that ravages the country, and some people don't believe it's happening until it actually happens to them, and it's all about
wonder that's so unrealistic. That would never happen.
So unrealistic. Oh my god. Actually, I think they handle it better in The Stand than we're handling it here. But to be honest, the disease that's happening in The Stand, you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore what's happening.
A lot of young people can avoid COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So hey, I'm young and healthy, and I'm not dying. So nobody else is. Therefore it's fine. Oh gosh, wow.
Another thing I wanted to talk about randomly, to do with books in general. I actually updated my website this week with stats that I got from booksirens.com. So if anybody out there has a Goodreads account, you can sign up for booksirens.com. And what that does is it looks at your Goodreads account and it grabs all the stats and analysis of when you read, what kind of genres you read, the gender of the authors that you read, everything. And then it compiles it all into a nice overview of a profile for you. It takes about 2 days to generate, so if you want to sign up today and maybe get it for the weekend, you could go ahead and do that.
I get to do that, so I might do it.
It's fascinating. It really is interesting to see your stats. I grabbed a bunch of them. I took screenshots of some of the more interesting stats and I plunked them down on my webpage. So you want to see an example, you can go to kenread.co.uk and then click on the literature tab at the top, and you can see all the stuff from Goodreads that automatically updates. So it shows what I'm currently reading, all the books I have read, and my to read list. It also shows an up-to-date version of all the stats from booksirens.com. So it's quite cool, and it's free. So just sign up for Book Sirens and you can see the stats, so long as you have a Goodreads account and update it fairly frequently. But it's good for that.
Well, yeah, I think Goodreads is the #1 social platform that I use.
Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah, we're just kind of weird.
We're nerds.
I think we just gave up on Facebook and Twitter and stuff.
Facebook and